So my name's Barry Mears. I am currently in my second year at the University of Glasgow studying primary education. When I was in the swap course, I went to Springburn College.
Hi, I'm Annie. I went to swap in Springburn as well, and I'm Barry a year later. I'm in first year of primary education at Glasgow Uni.
So for me, critical thinking has actually been quite apt this past semester. We've actually had to do critical thinking for one of our essays and one of our assignments. So it was really useful to have it on the swap course to kind of get you thinking about it to start off with. I think at uni, there's kind of like two steps to it. The first step is obviously you have to be a critical evaluator of any sources that you use. Like, is it relevant to what I want to say? But also the second part of that is it the only viewpoint? So one thing that I found I kind of struggled a little bit with is if you're making an argument to say the sky is blue for this reason, you then have to be able to say that's not the only reason. Other people will say, this is why the sky is blue, this is why the sky is blue. And then you have to take those other points and, as much as they're valid, say, however, this is why you feel your original source supports that. So it's quite complicated almost at uni, because you're not just evaluating the source, you also have to evaluate your viewpoint as well. I don't know how you found that, Annie.
I actually couldn't agree more. Uni's very much about not just finding reliable sources for things, you have to be forming your own opinion on it. And it can be difficult at times because there can be very smart people and very reliable sources that give completely opposing viewpoints on things. And they're equally reliable as things that are very much open to interpretation and open to opinion. And it is very much about forming your own stance on it, as well as just finding the information and putting it down on paper. So there is very much a need to find different viewpoints and then come to a conclusion at the end, which was tricky to start with. But it's interesting. It's nice to have not just the finding the information. It is nice to have to actually think about it as well and decide what part of this am I on board with.
Yeah, like the contradictory, there's a lot of contradictions. Like, there's a lot of contradiction there. And I think the easiest way to, like, as you kind of pointed, is like, if you have your own viewpoint, find information that will support your viewpoint and don't be scared to show other viewpoints that critique or go against the main idea. So if your idea is kind of different from the norm, there'll be evidence to support that, and it's not a bad thing. You don't have to change your thinking to support the norm. I think that's really important as well.
That's the thing. It all just is about finding relevant things to back up what you think. And there's not a wrong answer, as long as there's the information out there. Like, me and someone else could write essays with entirely opposing viewpoints, but neither of them's wrong, because we can support that information if we can find the relevant sources to do that. And I find that really interesting.
Yeah. I think it's easy to read too much, but I think it's also necessary to get like a wide range of perspectives on it.
Absolutely.
So if you find yourself reading too much in one direction, stop that direction and start looking in another direction. I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's a strange thing, because your essays, you have to have an opinion, but at the same time, your opinion is not enough. Your essay is not about what you think. It's about how do you prove that what you think is right? It was a very strange thing to start with. That I have to have an opinion, but really my opinion doesn't matter.
Yeah, so it's okay to disagree with the source, as long as the source is still relevant to what you need. So somebody could say something like completely off topic that you just wholeheartedly don't agree with. But if it supports your argument or shows that you're critically looking at your argument and you're not just cherry picking all the things that make your argument sing, that's really helpful, actually. So if you find a source that you disagree with, but if you take a step back and look at it through the eyes of criticality, like if it then shows that you've made some attempt at saying, I believe this, here are the sources that support this, but also these sources say differently against that. So I think disagreement with a source can be useful.
I think it's necessary for a balanced argument to have the opposite side and what you maybe don't agree with. And I think certainly I would decide I agreed with a source if, I think the most important thing is, what evidence do they have to tell me that what they're saying is accurate? You want something scientific, something solid that says that what they're saying isn't just speculation, that they have proof that what they're saying is true, is something I'd certainly look for.
But I also think it's really important to almost take a step back from what you're reading. So people can cite, like in a lot of books that we read, that will cite theorists. So like I was just doing an essay there, and it was a book by Cohen et al. That I'd read. But in that, they had cited Kolb and Vygotsky and Piaget. But they had then interpreted their work through their own lens. And sometimes that interpretation can be too emotional rather than fact-based. But because they're quoting those three theorists, you think obviously the viewpoint that they're making makes sense. Because like when we write an essay, what you're trying to do is find academic support for your argument. But you can essentially argue anything and find academic support if you cherry pick it. So you could say that you could only give half the story when it comes to the facts and then present it in an emotional way. Like, there's been like things that I've read from famous authors when they publish letters, and on paper it looks like they've got a sound argument because they've quoted that they've done research and they've quoted studies and papers and things. But when you take a step back and look at it and think, what are they actually saying? What is that information telling me? Like, you don't find out the other side of it.
Yeah.
I think that's really important when you're looking at sources, is to be able to say, what is the author of this saying to me? Like, just because they've got facts and figures and they're quoting theorists doesn't mean that they're actually correct.
Or even, is it of a benefit to them to make me believe this? Sometimes it's people will have a certain opinion because for other reasons than just scientific research. I think it's important as well when you're doing reading, not just to have an opinion, but I think you need to be at times willing to alter your opinion based on what you're reading. I think if you're too into something, and it's the same way as cherry picking sources to match what you're looking for, I think if you go in too dead set on this is right and this is what I think, then you're probably not going to get a lot out of your reading because you're looking for something in particular and you're not trying to really understand the different viewpoints of it. So I think it is important to have an opinion, certainly, but also have an open mind that you might change your opinion in the course of what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Annie. Like, I know sometimes when I've tried to look for information, I've been too narrow-minded in what I want the information to say. So, like, you're never going to find something that exactly fits it perfectly. Yeah. You're going to have to do a little bit of legwork on it and find sources that maybe two or three together say what you want, but there's never going to be that perfect source that says everything.